Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Supporting Ethical Manufacturing in India and Bangladesh. This is a joint webinar from the Ethical Supply Chain Programme and our friends at WRAP, the Worldwide Responsible Accredited Production Programme, a certification organisation similar to ESCP that you'll learn a lot more about through today's webinar. So firstly, just some housekeeping items to make you aware of. We are recording the session, so we'll distribute this afterwards. I think everyone for now is probably on mute, but we do have times and we would very much welcome any questions that any of you would like to ask either the team at ESCP or the team at WRAP. So you can use the chat function, which you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen. And if you press on the chat icon, you'll be able to type in your question and we will get to it at the end or towards the end of the webinar where we've allocated some time for Q&A. So please, as you go through, use that chat function to share any questions that you may have for anyone on today's panel. If we can't answer them immediately, we'll definitely come back to you in the follow-up when we share the link to the webinar recording and also the list of questions that came through. But I'm delighted to welcome you all, as I said, to today's webinar. Today we're going to focus on sourcing opportunities in India and Bangladesh. For those who don't know, my name is Carmel Giblin and I'm the CEO of the Ethical Supply Chain Programme. In a couple of slides, we'll do some introductions to the other participants on today's webinar. But just to give some words by way of introduction and context, supply chain diversification is at the very forefront of all our minds and companies right now. Throughout 2025, we have seen tariffs increase, which have increased also the urgency, or should I say tariffs implemented, which have increased the urgency for companies to consider how best to diversify their supply base. In doing that, they need to consider all the implications, such as cost, capability, quality, and of course, the labour standards of the treatment of workers in their supply chain. Sourcing responsibly is a business imperative for companies. And at the Ethical Supply Chain Programme, we are here to support you in your diversification efforts, to support you to do that confidently and responsibly. It has always been our commitment to provide support to our members so you can source with confidence and will be wherever we are needed. For that reason, I'm delighted to be collaborating with WRAP. WRAP will provide ESCP and our members essential support to help us source confidently and to help you source confidently in key countries where currently ESCP would have limited on-the-ground resources. We know the value of experts on the ground. It is so important when you're building supplier capability that you have a partner that you can work with locally that understands the operating environments, understands the different culture, understands the different regulations that your suppliers may be facing. And that's why providing support to our members in India and Bangladesh was so important, as these countries represent huge opportunities, we all believe, in terms of sourcing destinations in the future. WRAP will introduce their organisation in much more detail in a few minutes when I hand over to them, but I am delighted by the openness and commitment to cooperation and to supporting ESCP members that has been shown by both Avidis, who is the CEO at WRAP, and Mark, who is one of the other team members at WRAP, who, like I say, will introduce themselves in a moment and then share their insights and expertise from India and Bangladesh. As a reminder, for those of you who are members of ESCP, there is no change in terms of how you interact with us. We see WRAP as a really important enabling partner for ESCP and for our members. But you still remain members of ESCP. There is no increase, for example, in your fees or in the charges that are presented to you if you're a buyer or to you if you're a factory undergoing the certification program. So your interaction remains as it always has been with us, and then we will manage the relationship directly with RAP. But I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us all to broaden the level of on-the-ground expertise that we're able to offer to our communities. And I'll talk a little more about partnerships more generally in ESCP and how we will use them strategically moving forward. So in terms of the time that we have together on today's webinar, I'll cover just a reminder of who ESCP is and what we do for those of you who may not be so familiar. And also, like I say, touch on the partnerships and the value of partnerships and collaborations to us as a membership organisation moving forward. I'll then hand over to the team at RAP, who will share the main bulk of today's webinar, really, the in-depth insights from Bangladesh and India. Todd will end today's webinar with a introduction to our marketplace feature, which is available to all ESCP members through the Connect platform. And then we've got time at the very end for questions and answers. So like I say, please use the chat function throughout today's webinar to ask any questions you have. And we'll answer them at the end of the question or in the follow-up that we send out afterwards, along with a recording of today's webinar. So if you move to the next slide, please, Todd. So who's on the panel today? Myself, as I introduced, the president and CEO of the Ethical Supply Chain Program. Todd, my colleague, who's head of business development. I think his title's just changed actually recently, and we haven't updated the slide. But Todd can introduce himself in his correct new role at the end of today's session. Very excited to have the team from RAP with us. So Avidis, who is the president and CEO of RAP, and Mark, the Senior Vice President and Board Secretary, also from RAP. So delighted to have this panel together. The next slide, please. So we thought it would be good to get to know each other through today's webinar. So you'll see on your screen, I think we've got 5 quick questions in this first poll, and it will really just help us to identify who's on today's webinar and how we can best make sure that the topics we cover today meet your needs and give us greater understanding in how we support you moving forward. So if you can just select from this poll, so are you a brand manufacturer, licensor, retailer, supplier, agent, membership or trade association, or a service provider? So if you click on the radial button that suits you, and also which of these countries is your primary sourcing location currently? And there's only 4 options, so select from those 4. Okay, so we have quite a broad split, which is great. So a real mixed community on today's webinar, which is great. Thank you. The answer to the next question. Okay, so China, #1 sourcing country for everyone on today's call, followed by Vietnam and India. And then a big 81% of you seeking to diversify from your current locations. And then what are the top 3 reasons? So we have a big majority really driven by tariffs and global trade policy and trying to reduce geopolitical risk. So I guess no surprises there, but really good to understand. But also I think there is other benefits that we're seeing through the poll as well. So we will capture all the responses to the poll and share these out also after today's event. So thank you for that. If we move to the next slide, Todd, please. So just a quick reminder of who the Ethical Supply Chain Program is and why we're a little different. I guess the important thing to say in this slide is that we're very similar to RAP, which is one of the reasons that we are so excited about this collaboration. Avidis will share more about RAP, but fundamentally we are both certification organizations. And that means we're really committed to ensuring that audits are really robust and that the findings of audits are actually acted upon and remediated. And that for us is really important. We are two organizations that are really committed to the certification approach and really committed to remediation and going beyond the provision of a standalone audit. We think that adds real robustness to any company's supplier oversight strategy. And also, we're two organizations that really want to understand the challenges that both our factories who are using the certification program and also the buyers who are seeking assurance from that, what it is that they need from that program. And we really want to give them the confidence and assurance. So we're excited by the close alignment of our missions as two organizations. For the ethical supply chain program, we're a program of choice by and used and accepted by most global retailers. We are a not-for-profit organization, similarly to RAP, on the not-for-profit organization, and really committed to having on location teams, so on the ground teams who provide expert support to our members. Our programs and services are, as you would expect, inspired and aligned with the requirements of things like the ILO conventions, ETI base code, OECD frameworks. And we also work in support of achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are fast approaching their deadline for completion and sadly, which will be missed by most organizations. So it is important for us that we frame our programs and show how companies can support the delivery of the UN Sustainable Development Goals through robust oversight and supplier engagement. And importantly for us, we really want to have programs that shift the dial in terms of the positive impacts that they have for workers in the supply chain. And an area I think where we are a little different is around worker well-being, our worker well-being programs, specifically on things like our worker helpline, our family-friendly factory program, and a lot of the gender equality programs that we have been deploying. Specifically, our worker helpline has been accessible since launch, which was launched more than 15 years ago. It's been accessible by more than 10 million workers. And our family-friendly spaces program has now supported more than 30,000 children. So we're really excited about how we operate differently and also how aligned we are with our colleagues at RAP on our mission and approach. Next slide. This one is just a quick one just to talk about our partnerships. We see partnerships as a really useful way to add value to our community of stakeholders. The ESCP is a membership organization. RAP is not a membership organization, but we have a large shared community between the two of us. And we think it's really important to find opportunities where we can amplify our work, accelerate the impact that we're having on delivering improved labor standards in supply chains, and drive cost efficiencies where we can. So instead of creating duplication, we want to seek opportunities where we can avoid duplication and build on collaboration. So RAP is a really exciting new partner for us. They're going to help our members on the ground in key sourcing countries. We are excited to start a pilot with RAP certified suppliers by offering the helpline to them in locations including China and Vietnam. And we do have other partners that we work with and you'll have heard of from time to time, including Licensing International, where we are the approved social compliance partner, Products of Change, and Cradle to Cradle, two organizations very much focused on helping companies around product sustainability. So partnerships are important, collaboration is important, and I think that's represented well in the stakeholder community that we have today. So next slide, I think is, oh no, okay. So this is just to reinforce that we are a global organization. Most of you will know, and reflected probably in the poll, that we are very present and focused historically on mainland China and also other countries in Southeast Asia. But in more recent years, we have expanded our global presence and also the sectors that we operate in. So everything now from toys through to print and packaging, metals, electronics, and more recently in the apparel sector. So we are where you need us, and if we're not there on the ground, then we will seek friends and partners that can help provide that on the ground support. Next slide. Right, just before I hand over to the team at RAP, we're going to do one more polling, which will help the guys from the RAP side understand where you are currently sourcing from, and what your perceptions may be on some of these countries, on India and Bangladesh, sorry, particularly, whether you are excited about those opportunities, nervous about those opportunities. So again, if you can just press the radial buttons. Many of you sourcing already from India and Bangladesh, which is great to see. Still some opportunity for others there. A big interest, it would seem, in sourcing in the future, both from India and Bangladesh. So really pleased that we've got the right countries for today's first webinar with RAP. What are your concerns? What are your perceptions? So high potential, ready to explore is about 15% of those on the call today. But increasingly, and this is why the partnership, I guess, with RAP is so exciting for us, over nearly 80% of you see India and Bangladesh as promising and exciting, but you have concerns. So today, we really hope to share with you some more insights that will give you some confidence, but also know that you've got partners on the ground where you can source and move forward with confidence. Excellent. Okay. So next slide, I think, is to hand over to RAP. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, please use the chat function at the bottom to ask any questions as we go through today's webinar. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Carmel. A real pleasure to be with you and this audience today. As you mentioned, this is a great partnership that we are thrilled to be engaging in, and looking forward to this first of what's hopefully going to be many such joint webinars and conversations within our stakeholder groups. As Carmel said, I'm Avedi Seferian. I'm the president and CEO of RAP, Worldwide Responsible Accredited Production. I'm joined today by my colleague, Mark Jager, who's our Senior Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement, as well as the Secretary of our board. And we're going to give you a quick overview of RAP, which, as Carmel mentioned, is a social audit and certification program. Next slide, please, Todd. Just to give you a sense of what we're going to cover in the next 20 minutes or so, I'll, over the next couple of slides, give you a sense of RAP's profile and governance structure, as well as give you some details about how we conduct our operations. And as you'll see, and as Carmel has already mentioned, lots of similarities there for you, and the reason why this partnership is such a good one and works well. And then I'll hand over to Mark to do a deeper dive on the specific countries that we're interested in today, focusing on India and Bangladesh, give you a sense of what our presence is in those countries and give you some details in country. And then also actually using Bangladesh as an example, talk to you a little bit about what our data there tells us about working conditions, and give you a sense of what we can do with regards to data analytics and giving you insights to help ease some of those concerns, or at least highlight the ones that you really should be concerned about. And then I'll be back to sort of wrap things up, haha, no pun intended, with kind of the big picture landscape involving India and Bangladesh before we turn to questions about this part of the presentation, prior to then handing things back over to Todd for the final stretch there. And I'm curious about what the new title is going to be, Todd. I'm looking forward to hearing that. Next slide, please. All right. So Carmel pointed out a lot of similarities between ESCP and RAP, and I will be repeating some of those. But the one place where we are different is the fact that RAP is not a membership program. We are otherwise structured similarly as a nonprofit, and we're a certification program, and all the things that we do are quite compatible. But that fundamental basis of the model is different. We are set up as a purely fee-for-service nonprofit, and not a membership. And in many ways, that's one of the reasons why this partnership works so well, because as Carmel said, this is not going to mean any increase in costs for you. You won't have to join RAP. There's no additional fees. There's no a way that this is going to be a burden on you financially. This is just a partnership that works for both sides. We don't want your money. We just wanted the partnership with ESCP. Now, the rest of the stuff, as we mentioned, we're very similar. We are a certification program, so not just audit, unlike some of the peers that ESCP and RAP operate with in this space. We not only audit the facility and get a report, but we also make sure that we have a process in place that when non-compliances are identified, we have to make sure the factory corrects them, and then we validate that they have been corrected before we can issue a certificate that says the minimum standards have been met. This is increasingly something that brands and retailers are looking for because of the range of due diligence legislation and requirements now make it mandatory to have this kind of corrective measures in place, and audit only will just not get you there. So a certification program is indeed the wave of the future and the great value that ESCP and RAP bring to our stakeholder space. Like ESCP, we operate in a range of industries. Our focus historically has been on sewn products, apparel, footwear, but we are looking at ancillary and expanding horizontally and vertically industries, travel goods, home textiles, PPE, some hard goods. So a very similar profile with our friends at ESCP. And again, the other area that we're similar is historically our focus has been on tier 1 facilities, cut and sew mainly in the apparel space, but we are expanding, as I said, vertically as well into tier 2 and beyond as we look at things like dye houses and fabric mills and the like, going further upstream into the raw material space. Next slide, please. We are a nonprofit, and sort of to get wonky about it, organized under Section 501c6 of the Internal Revenue Service Code here in the United States, which makes us a nonprofit, but not a charity. So we're not like the Red Cross or other charities. We don't get to have donations made to us and then taxes deducted. We're purely a nonprofit fee-for-service organization. As I said, that's the code of our organization within the IRS structure. We were founded on January 7th of the year 2000, making this our 25th anniversary, something that we've been slowly celebrating all year long, and we'll sort of build up to it as the 20th year comes to its close here now in the final quarter. We have an independent board of directors, and our charter, our bylaws mandate that the majority of that board be composed of non-industry individuals. This is important because we want to make sure that we are not beholden to industry. As you saw, we're not structured as a membership organization, so we don't take money from brands and retailers. We also don't want to have brands and retailers be able to control our operations by having a majority stake on our board. So this ensures our independence. And not only, by the way, are we not funded through membership, we actually have no grants or institutional funding at all. As I said, we are purely fee-for-service, something that, as you can imagine, is especially gratifying right now with all the challenges and the cuts to government funds that we are living through in this day and age. So all of this is set up this way to ensure that RAP can operate as an independent certification body, not beholden to industry, not driven by agendas of institutional donors or any other kind of grant suppliers. So we are able to be independent, and we operate as a worker-centric program, but in recognition of the reality that for workers' lives to improve, you need to have profitable factories, and for profitable factories to exist, you need to have profitable brands and retailers so that the ecosystem can continue to sustain itself. So we see ourselves as a program that acts at that intersection of workers, buyers, and suppliers, focused on improving working places as our mission. Next slide, please. These are the 12 principles that undergird our program. I won't go into detail here. They will look very similar to those of you familiar with ESCP or any other, robust standard. One thing that we are a little bit setting ourselves apart with is you'll see the first 9 are your standard labor-based social compliance expectations: no forced labor, no child labor, no harassment or abuse, health and safety, freedom of association, all of those things. but we have a few that go a little bit beyond. We touch upon environmental matters, primarily to the extent that they affect workers' health and safety. So we're focused mostly on emissions. We're not an environmental program that does carbon or water or energy or anything like that, but we use that as a basis to establish that the workers are being safeguarded against environmental hazards. And then we have principles 11 and 12 that really are different from all our peers. We have portions of the audit that focus on customs compliance and security that become relevant for exporting units. We don't use these two principles when dealing with facilities that don't export, but I'll touch upon them a little bit more, but I'll just point them out as something that we do a little bit different here. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about our operations, both from a numbers perspective and from a functions perspective. We have not yet finished this year, but we are on track to outdo 2024. But this is the data for 2024, top 10 countries only listed. And no surprise again that China is number one. We're not as heavily concentrated in China as our friends at ESCP, given the industries involved. Vietnam's a close second. And then Bangladesh, India, and Cambodia bring up the top 5. We received a little over 3,900 applications in calendar year 2024, conducted about 5,775 audits. That's not a rounded number. That's actually an exact figure. It just came in that way. We certified 3,740 supplier sites. That's how many certificates we issued last year. Right now, at this point in time, we are working with 21 monitoring firms as our partners. Again, very similar players to the ones that ESCP engages with. We have these partners in a little over 45 countries, 47, I believe, exactly. And 600 individual RAP accredited auditors work for these partners. And we operate a model where we have to accredit the monitoring firm and individually train and accredit the auditor, who has to be, both of them have to be members of the Association of Professional Social Compliance Auditors, or APSCA, as a way to further ensure quality of audits and quality management of the audit process. At present, I checked this morning, we have 3,942 factories holding a current RAP cert, together employing a little over 3.9 million workers. So a large footprint that we are quite proud of. Next slide, please. So how do we do these audits? Again, very similar to ESCP, we are a management systems-based social compliance audit and certification program. What that means is this is not a checklist audit. We're not going into a factory with a clipboard and say, oh, there's the exit, there's the fire extinguisher. None of that. We make sure that there is a systemic framework in place at these facilities to ensure compliance to all 12 of our principles, all the legal requirements that they are built on. And again, like ESCP, those 12 principles that you saw draw upon international standards and local laws and regulations and the OECD guidelines and the UN guiding principles and the ILO core conventions, of course. We require that factories adopt, deploy, and monitor their compliance with our requirements, again, to ensure that there is a management system. And like ESCP, we're not precious about having a system dedicated solely to RAP. We don't want to duplicate existing procedures. We don't want to impose additional costs on factories. So integrated management systems are absolutely acceptable and, in fact, highly encouraged because that would be the best way to tackle these things. Next slide. And again, like ESCP, our audits are all on-site, in-person initial audits that cover the full range of our requirements. Follow-ups may be on-site or desktop, depending on the nature of the non-compliance. And this, by the way, is, as I said, where I'll mention that our audits, the Principle 11 and 12 part of our audits, are actually benchmarked to U.S. Customs and Border Protection's CTPAT program, Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism program, to ensure that our audits then give the importer of record in the U.S. that assures that the facility meets CTPAT requirements, which enables us, by the way, to be a program that retailers can use to meet not only their social compliance requirements, but also their security audit requirements. So, for example, Walmart uses RAP one audit to cover both social and security. Costco, likewise. The thing that we call our secret sauce in some ways, and the basis for the quality assurance model in-house is something that we have designated as a PCA, post-certification assessments. We go back between 20 and 25% of facilities that we certify, we go back to at no cost to the facility. It's a cost that we bear ourselves to revalidate that they continue to stay in compliance. And this is a promise that they've made, right? That they pass an audit, they're going to keep those systems in place, those management systems. We want to make sure that they are doing that. So obviously in the higher risk facilities, we go back about a quarter of the factories that we certify to ensure that. And that is also a double check on the work done by the auditors. In addition to these, we also have our own staff auditors that don't do certification audits at factories, but we use them to do these PCAs and to check on the audit firms as a additional quality control. So happy to dive more into the operational questions that you might have. But for now, I know our focus is on India and Bangladesh. So I will hand things over to my colleague Mark to walk us through our presence in those countries and give us some deeper dive into the situation in Bangladesh before I'll come back to do the big picture wrap up. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Avidis, and good morning and good afternoon. So RAP's had a long and active experience and presence in India. In 2024, we had over 300 RAP certified factories in India, and that included the 302 registrations Avidis mentioned previously when he went over the top 10 countries for RAP. Today, RAP has 3 full-time equivalent staff based in India. We have them spread out from the south to the north, covering all of India. This also includes our head of auditor training. Auditor training is a very important feature of the RAP education and training program. It ensures the auditors meet the requirements for RAP, and we also require, as Avidis mentioned, that those auditors be members of ASPCA and be credentialed in order to be a lead auditor doing audits for RAP. We've worked in a range of industries in India, as Avidis indicated previously, sort of as well with ESCP. We've expanded out-of-zone products to include coir, coconut matting, some jewelry facilities, even some plush facilities. We work where our stakeholders really want us to be and where there's a need for a program to assure social compliance. We are very aware, though, of not leading to audit fatigue and multiple audits and programs layering on top of each other, and work aggressively to try to reduce that fatigue. That's another aspect of what's so exciting about the relationship here with ESCP. RAP typically works with the more sophisticated facilities. Generally, they don't have to be the largest, but they're experienced exporters to the US, to Europe. Their understanding of the importance of social compliance. They work closely with their buyers. They've built up programs and staff internally, and we work hard to keep those factories informed and to get their certifications renewed. But in the last couple of years, our board has had us focus also on facilities that are not yet RAP certified, perhaps facilities that are smaller, haven't really joined into the export efforts from their country. We feel we can have a bigger impact with these facilities, make sure their social compliance is up to international standards. And so we're increasingly focused on not just renewing existing facilities, but growing our new facilities with the RAP program. Our headquarters staff visits India on a regular basis. Avidis is conversant in several languages. He spent some of his schooling years, younger years in India. I make it to India regularly as well. So it's important that RAP headquarter team and the local team stay on top of trends, and we attend shows and other activities in India to stay current. We also facilitate in India and across the other regions where we operate good relationships with trade associations. We find they can be a helpful conduit to facilities, give us opportunities to explain the importance of social compliance and to share information about the RAP program. One example would be in southern India, the Tirupur Exporter Association, very, very strong association. We have a very good relationship with them. Next slide, please. So if we look at just sort of a generic map of India, you can see that there's a wide range of industries. In fact, these industries have built up for historic reasons in different geographical locations. In southern India, you can see a concentration for knitting and textiles. We spend a lot of time working with facilities in this region. In eastern India, you can see more concentrated leather production. RAP is active in the leather industries as well in India. And moving further north up by Delhi, you can see some toy production there. There is toy production across India. And some of the other industries that I've mentioned that we've been operating in, floor coverings, furnitures and tabletop, home textiles. So we have a strong experience in India as we do in the other countries where we have staff and large number of registrations. I'm going to move now to the next slide and talk about Bangladesh, but we'll come back to India at the end. So moving east geographically over to Bangladesh, this was one of RAP's first in-person offices. We opened our Bangladesh office, I think, in May of 2011. Today, we have 5 full-time employees working out of our Dhaka office. 2 of these are full social compliance auditors. As Avadis indicated, we rely on internal RAP auditors around the world to do post-certification assessments for RAP and also to lead investigations when there are problems. So these social compliance auditors in our Bangladesh office, they're in factories almost 5 days a week. They really have their hand on the pulse of what's working and what's not working. And if they identify problems, it's quickly accelerated up through headquarters at RAP. And that's how we operate to make sure the quality of the certification continues. Likewise, headquarters staff is regularly in Bangladesh. Avadis in particular has been there the last couple of years speaking. We just held our Monitor Council meeting where we pull in auditors from all around the region into Dhaka and share updates on the RAP program and gather intelligence on what's going on in the region and in Bangladesh. In 2024, we had almost 400 registered facilities in Bangladesh. We carry a couple of key MOUs and maintain those and build on those. One's with the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Export Association, the leading apparel trade association, and then also with the Bangladesh Knitwear Exporter Association. We have MOUs with both. And we've conducted a wide range of training in Bangladesh, just as we do in India. And that training can be focused on facilities that are being exposed to RAP or need to be updated on issues like CTPAT security. Also, that training can focus on monitors in the region, like we just did with our MCM training, and associations and even stakeholder representatives have buying offices in region. We provide training for those wide range of groups. And next slide. So again, looking at just a generic map of Bangladesh, you can see Dhaka in the center. As I mentioned, that's where RAP's headquarters facility is in Bangladesh. The types of industries we've worked in Bangladesh, really by product category, shoes and accessories, caps, denim, and a lot of knit facilities as well. Generally speaking, the factories in Bangladesh are larger than they are in other countries, for example, comparative to China. So these audits are more comprehensive. They take a little more time. RAP has standards about minimum audit days, depending on the size of the facility. That helps to ensure that auditors don't get too aggressive and shortcut the audit, that they work through all the 12 principles in the full audit document at RAP. And if you look over on the map on the right, you'll see that most of RAP's activities, certifications are in the Dhaka region, almost 327 in the last year, but also in Chittagong, where the major port is located. Next slide, please. So as Avadis indicated, one of the tools we've been bringing to bear more and more for the benefit of stakeholders is analyzing our own audit reports. And at one time, these weren't really conducive to being audited. They were more static PDF type formats. Now we've been able to develop tools to extract information that's important and of interest to stakeholders. And in particular, what we look at is non-compliances identified in the audit. And those non-compliances are sorted against the 12 principles of RAP. And then within the 12 principles, we expand down to identify in more detail, a more granular look, Well, what specifically was that noncompliance in that factory in that country? And this is helpful because it also allows us to, for example, educate auditors on what are the key trends in that country, or to do some comparison within a factory over time. Is it getting better, the same, or worse? Or compare it to a neighboring country that it might be competing with for export business. These reports typically are fairly large, 20 type pages. So I extracted just a couple highlights I wanted to share with you today, and this report was just completed in the last couple weeks. So maybe the next slide. So to set the ground here, overall RAP audited almost 6,000 factories around the world from June 24 to June 25. Focusing in on Bangladesh, we had nearly 800 audits. Within this number, about 56% resulted in a corrective action plan, a CAP report, meaning there were some non-compliances identified. And again, one of the important things for certification programs like ESCP and RAP is we don't just flag the non-compliance, we ask that it be mitigated, remediated, closed, and then move to certification. So a little over about 56% of the Bangladesh audits in this 1 year period resulted in a CAP that required follow-up. And that is what our data would analyze. And the other portion, 44%, had a recommendation to go right to certification, if you will, a clean audit. So what did the data show? We'll take a look at the next slide. It showed that in Bangladesh, for that 1 year period, for the audits that resulted in a CAP, the primary principle that was identified was health and safety. That's our principle 8, and it accounted for 44% of the non-compliances that were flagged. Now, in some cases, these CAP reports will identify multiple non-compliances, so the numbers don't add up to precisely the total number that were conducted that I mentioned. But the key here is to realize Principle 8, health and safety, is the predominant finding that we've noticed in that 1 year period, followed by Principle 12, security, which deals with CTPAT compliance for facilities that are exporting to the U.S., followed by Principle 6, hours of work, and then compliance with laws and workplace regulations, Principle 1. The first three are over 80%, and that's really what we'll focus on next and take a look at a deeper dive. What in health and safety was found? So here's a little more granular view of what non-compliances were found under Principle 8, health and safety, for that 1 year period. And the first area, the predominant one, 300 findings, workers required to wear PPE were found not wearing it. And so this is a situation where ear protection, eye protection, foot protection, gloves were indicated by the type of job, but were not in place. These require not just that the worker be handed a pair of gloves, but that management sit down with the auditor and work through why it was the worker did not have those gloves on that day. So what's the root cause of the absence of the gloves? Is there a program in place to make sure sufficient materials are available to workers? Is there a program and training in place on how to wear the PPE? These are the kind of things that RAP auditors have been trained to dig into and fix, not just address on the spot. That's why it's in a non-compliance and a CAP. Likewise, presence of required safety measures on machines. If they're not there, why aren't they there? And how are you going to make sure they'll be there when we come back for the PCA? And this next one is a sensitive one, particularly in Bangladesh, and that's restricted access to emergency exits. Now, this doesn't mean that the exits were locked. It could mean that there were some impediments in the evacuation route that's marked on the floor. There were some boxes there, or the mark wasn't, the route wasn't taped properly, or the signage wasn't correct. But it could be up to and including a locked exit door. And if it were that situation, that would be considered by RAP a zero tolerance, and it would require immediate remediation and on-site review and cause analysis for why that occurred. And sadly, we just read yesterday of a situation in Bangladesh where there was a fire and a loss of life. Very unfortunate, and the fact pattern is emerging. It appears that this was not an exporting facility. It indicates as maybe a domestic subcontractor. From our records, it was not a RAP certified facility, but we're still acquiring more information. And these are the kind of reasons why, when you have multi-story facilities, it's so important to work with a program that has experience in the country. And you can see it breaks down into much more detail after that. Some folks are really keen on these, and we're happy to share this kind of data with stakeholders. And I think next slide. Just to comment on the overtime issue, this was Principle 6 under hours. We take a keen interest in the hours worked. We track the hours worked. We measure it against local requirements. In this case, in Bangladesh, Principle 6 non-compliances were concerns with both daily and weekly overtime. Likewise, we will work through a plan with the management team before we clear that non-compliance and issue a certification. And I think that's my last slide, Avadis. Let me go ahead and advance. Yep, you got the big picture and taking it home.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm mindful that we're got about 11 minutes left, so I'll do this quickly so we can save as much time as possible for questions and for Todd at the end. Many of you in that poll indicated you have concerns. 54% had concerns. Another close to 30% were interested, but had more questions. And there's a reason for that. Both these countries have their challenges. And that includes sort of large challenges and some near-term headwinds as well. And so let me start with India. And again, the polls were very clear that tariffs were driving a lot of the need to sort of look at alternative sourcing destinations. And in India, that is going to be a challenge because right now the tariff relationship is a bit dodgy. The current tariff rates on India are 50% plus the most favored nation rate. So one of the higher tariffed countries at the moment. There are negotiations ongoing, and it's possible that US and India will reach some agreement. In fact, at the beginning of all of this, back in July, there had been talk of a full free trade agreement with India. That hasn't quite materialized, and as I said, right now, trade tensions are high, but there is ongoing negotiations, and most people don't expect things to stay at this 50% plus MFN rate. But of course, it's hard to predict what the timing will be and when things will move. But that is a matter of concern at the moment and something I know is on folks' mind. The other thing about India is it's tempting to think of it as a single country, but in many ways it is not. It really is a very diverse country, and there are significant differences between regions on a range of issues, not just linguistic or cultural, but just as a ease of business, as efficiency concerns. So the North and the South are kind of the two sort of the dividing zone is really a North-South divide. And you saw some of that reflected in kind of the concentration of industries and the choices between them. But they are very different. And it is important to understand that experiences in India in one part may not necessarily reflect what you'll go experience in others, which is why, as Mark mentioned, when we staffed up the region, we actually made sure that we had people present all over in the North and in the South, because they are quite distinct culturally and linguistically as well. As I said, if you're a Northerner and all you speak is English and Hindi, what you'll be using in the South is English, not because no one speaks Hindi there, and then vice versa. So it is important to have that on-the-ground expertise, and the reason why, as I said, we have set ourselves up the way we have. Bangladesh has been in the news a lot, and not all of it has necessarily been for the best reasons. One piece that perhaps was on the positive side was the revolution that they had last August. At the end of July, there was an uprising, and then the 5th of August, the then Prime Minister fled the country, and it's been since governed by a Nobel Peace Prize laureate who is, I'm sure, quite excited about the fact that new elections are lined up for sometime in 2026. They're expecting it in the first half of the year. February was kind of the date indicated. I don't expect to see it maybe that soon, but the idea is that sometime before June of next year, there will be new elections, a new government will be formed. The country has been relatively stable in the interim, and exports have been growing over the past year. So that's all good. But elections are always a challenge. And If the process goes smoothly and we have a smooth transition, I think that will be just a great reinforcement of the progress Bangladesh has made. But it is going to be a difficult one because the ruling party has been discredited and might not actually be allowed to compete in the election. The opposition party had been greatly weakened in the previous decade, but they sort of are the only viable choice. But there are a lot of smaller parties now vying for filling in that vacuum. So it's going to be a period of interest to watch, and we are all hoping that it will be a positive sort of process, and we'll be back to sort of a stable government, and Bangladesh can sort of go back to business as usual. On the tariff side of the scale, things are not so bad for Bangladesh. The current reciprocal tariff is about 20% plus the MFN rate. That's about the same for most of the big players in the region, and definitely not by itself a prohibitive figure when you compare it to all the other major players, Vietnam, Cambodia, and the like. Bangladesh is, however, going to be graduating from LDC status, least developed country status. So its duty-free access to other markets like Canada and the EU may be phasing out over the next couple of years. So a factor to consider. But where I wanted to close out on Bangladesh is acknowledging, as Mark mentioned, that another piece of bad news that came out yesterday and is on the airwaves today is about safety concerns in Bangladesh, something that has dogged this country ever since 2013 when the Rana Plaza tragedy occurred, and it continues to cast a long shadow. As Mark said, this was actually, the news say it's a garment facility, right? Because that's kind of where news focus has been on. It isn't. It was actually a washing facility, and the fire apparently didn't even begin there. It began next door in a chemical plant. But of course, all of that is not going to be of comfort. And it was not a wrap factory, as we said, and we were very careful, obviously, in making sure that the wrap facilities are very much up to standards. But for folks that are looking at Bangladesh and hearing these things in the news, I can understand that it gives you pause. And I would suggest that you be thoughtful about it. But Bangladesh is a huge country with thousands of factories. And some of the absolute best factories in the world are there. And so it is absolutely possible to source from Bangladesh in a safe way, and in a way that it involves engaging with factories that are RAP certified and validated to be responsible vendors. You just have to be careful and ensure that, for example, they have good controls on things like unauthorized subcontracting, which is where you might get in trouble with facilities if they don't have that kind of measures in place. So that's, again, why we have 5 full-time staff in Bangladesh, and why we take such pains to have 2 auditors among them and make sure they're constantly out there looking for challenges and making sure that things are reported back as soon as any concerns arise, so that they can be dealt with before they lead to such tragedies as the ones we heard about in the news yesterday. So that's all we have for you on India and Bangladesh. Happy to take some questions. And as Carmel mentioned, anything that we can't get to here, we'll be happy to come back to around in follow-ups thereon. So Carmel, I think you're driving the boat for Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark, Avidis. It's great insights. We have got a lot of questions and we are slightly over time, so we can go on a little bit longer so we can cover the Q&A that we've got through, but we will also publish the answers in follow-up. Todd, I just want to give you the opportunity to share the Connect update and the marketplace, because some of the questions actually relate to finding new suppliers. But yeah, if you can bear with us, Todd, if you can do your slide fairly quickly, and then I'll try and get through the Q&A as quickly as possible as well, because there is a lot of questions come through. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carmel. Yes, my name is Todd Merton. I'm the Director of Member and Partnership Services, or Partnership Growth here at the Ethical Supply Chain Program. And as we mentioned, we want to make sure that we get to the questions, because that's obviously why everybody's here. So I'll get through this real quickly. Since kind of the overarching theme of this webinar, has to do with sourcing, I just want to take a quick minute to update everyone on a new service that we've developed for our online sourcing platform, the Connect platform, which many of you on the call, might be familiar with. As people that are sourcing new products, I'm sure you're very aware that, when looking for a new factory, it can be quite time consuming and cumbersome and much of a one-way street where you're responsible for trying to find a factory, doing the due diligence, make sure that they're up to speed on what they have to be, but really just the finding the factory and going down that road with them. So we wanted to develop something that created more of a two-way street where you could still do the work that you need to do to identify appropriate suppliers. But because we have this database of already certified suppliers that are ready and open to do business with our members, we developed what was called the ESCP marketplace on the Connect platform, which again allows it to be more of a two-way street where our members can actually post open jobs on the platform. So instead of you looking for the suppliers, this gives you the opportunity for the suppliers to find you that match with what the type of product and the type of job that you're looking for. So you can post a job. It'll alert suppliers that meet the criteria that you're looking for, letting them know that there is a potential new job out there with one of our members, and then the factory can then reach out to you directly. So again, it's designed really to allow the platform to work for you while you might be sleeping. You're still doing your work on your end, but you've got another avenue now for the factories to reach out to you directly, which cuts down on the time that it would take for you to potentially identify and go through all of the due diligence of working with a supplier. The marketplace also allows you to go on and very quickly see profiles of factories that meet your criteria, whether you're searching by product, by location. You can see a quick profile, quick pictures of not only the factory itself, but the products that they make, which again is designed to help you cut down on the amount of time that you spend sourcing. So again, I don't want to take away time from the questions, but just wanted to make everybody aware of the new feature of our Connect platform. And I'm happy to set up any calls with anybody that would like to see a live demonstration of that. You can reach out to me after the webinar today, and I'd be happy to do that. So without further ado, we'll get into the questions.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much, Todd. So, like I say, we've got quite a few questions here. Please continue to post them in the Q&A icon at the bottom, because if we don't get to them now, we'll definitely post them in our follow-up. So there is a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, which you can use and just type the question in there. So first off, for companies new to sourcing from India or Bangladesh, how can RAP or ESCP help them identify and engage with compliant ethical suppliers? Actually, that's directly after Todd's question. So from ESCP perspective, we've got the marketplace function. One of the things that we will engage further with RAP on is how can we make the RAP estate of certified suppliers available and more visible. So whether it's actually integrating it in the marketplace function or some other way that we can help our member community at ESCP and also the RAP community find quality certified suppliers more effectively, we'll do that. So yes, that's high on our agenda, and the marketplace is already there to support that. So hopefully that answers that question. Will ESCP certification be different in India and Bangladesh to what we're used to in, say, China? No, it won't. The process is exactly the same. Where we are really valuing the support of RAP on the ground, and Mark and Avidis have shared with us their teams in Bangladesh and in India. We really value that because what we want to do is help build supplier capability. So our audits that lead to the certification from ESCP will be done in exactly the same way. There won't be a difference in standards or expectations. There will be obviously an acceptance of local laws and local guidelines, but the certification will mean the same whether it's a facility certified in Bangladesh or certified in China. So no change to the process, and the support that we'll get really is about capability building from the RAP on the ground expertise. Will I still see data in Connect from these countries? Yeah, absolutely. There's no change. So if your facility is certified by ESCP with support from RAP, you will still see it in your connected supply chain within the Connect platform. So no differences there. All the non-compliance is still able for you to analyze in deep deeply drill down into, etc. So no changes in the way that we implement the program or the way that you see data. Question about who reviews the audit report in these regions. Exactly the same. The process remains exactly the same. Every audit report that is part of the ESCP certification is reviewed by a member of the ESCP internal technical team. That continues. So there's no change, if you like, to the audit process, and you can be assured that every audit report is still reviewed. We will have the benefit of technical on the ground support from the RAP experts as well. So if we need to check something within an audit report, then we have experts who know the situation in both India and Bangladesh to support us in that technical review. But the technical reviews remains the same. This is probably one, I guess, maybe for Mark or Avidis for you to answer. We saw the non-compliances in Bangladesh, the top three, and I've already posted the answer, I think, to the question there. The top three, the number one issue found on RAP audits in Bangladesh was around health and safety with 44%. And then within health and safety, it related to the use of personal protection equipment, machine safety, and then access to fire exits and evacuation. So I think we covered it for Bangladesh. Do you have the same data available for India?
We do, and in the interest of time, we didn't attempt to put that in the deck, but we can share that with your members as well.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get it in the follow-up, and we'll include that in the follow-up for everyone. Can you support us in building supplier capability in these regions? That's absolutely the reason for this collaboration with RAP. We know that there are differences in supplier capability, but as Avidis very clearly said, there are fantastic suppliers both in Bangladesh and India. There are already many that are certified either by RAP or by ESCP. So there are quality suppliers there ready to do business. So that estate is already in place. But if you're identifying new suppliers, maybe that haven't had export business before and are less familiar with international standards and retailer requirements, then this is absolutely why we want to work with RAP on the ground so that we can provide your suppliers, be they new or existing, with support to ensure that you've got a stable, resilient supply chain that can meet your requirements and improve over time. So that's really important. So yes, we absolutely can. If anyone wants to start that process now of having their suppliers registered and certified, then just get in touch with Todd afterwards, and he can talk you through that process. But it won't be any different to if you have a factory that you're wanting certified in China or in Indonesia or Vietnam. So the same process will exist. They register on the platform, and then we manage that the way through. But building the capability is really core for us. Does India and Bangladesh have capability in injection molding as well as plush? We all know, I think, these countries very well for apparel and cut and sew. That's absolutely the area of expertise for our friends at RAP. So being a program so involved in the apparel sector as RAP is, we know there's a huge estate of those. But we also know that there are injection molding facilities and factories in India. So from our perspective, we think India and Bangladesh are able to support the needs of all the categories covered by RAP and by ESCP. So hard goods, apparel, footwear, plush, injection molding for plastics, etc. So yeah, I think you will be well covered there. And then there is a question is, if a Bangladesh factory has a RAP, do they also need a Neropron audit? That, I guess, is a question for you guys at RAP, because I don't know how to answer that.
I'll take that one, Carmel. All factories in Bangladesh do need to validate to our satisfaction that they are structurally sound, and we are a social compliance audit, so we don't have engineers on our audit teams. So we rely upon a DEA, detailed engineering assessment, that will be supplied, in the Accord and Alliance days, it would be the Accord of the Alliance supplying a report. Now it can be Nirupon, or it can be RSC. So we are going to require that. There are some cases where it's not needed if they are, one-story facilities in zoned industrial plants that are built to design. We are not going to need that. But for most factories, and as Mark mentioned, especially the high-risk ones, multi-story facilities or ones in commercial zones, we do need to have some kind of a DEA, detailed engineering assessment, prior to them being able to receive a RAP certificate.
Perfect. And I think that is a similar question, but maybe, Avedis, you can just check it is. Regarding the safety concerns, do you have intel that retailers are still conducting audits similar to the Accord Nirupon, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, so apologies, Nirupon audits to help push the industry to continue to look at these areas?
Indeed, there's so Nirupon kind of is the brand-led organization still in place. Call it the successor to the Alliance. The International Accord has a presence, but primarily those operations have been subsumed under the government-led RSC, Remediation Sustainability Cell, and they are all, from a personnel perspective, the same people that were doing the work under the Accord of the Alliance. They're just doing it now with a different hat on. But yes, engineering assessments are still being conducted. Brands and retailers, especially when they're onboarding new facilities, are making sure that they are up to code and meet the Bangladesh building code. And there is a repertoire of these reports with the RSC or with Nirupon, and that's something that RAP, as I said, also relies upon. So engineering assessments are continuing, which is why I am confidently saying that when you hear tragedies like the ones we saw on the news yesterday and today, they are the exception by far. And they are, it looks like Bangladesh keeps coming up with these, but you have to sort of, I suppose, put it in context. This is a country of 5,000 factories. And you're going to, as just a matter of statistics, have good factories and bad factories. You need to make sure, as a brand and a retailer, that you're working with validated, verified, good factories, and you have those resources between ESCP and RAP to make that in a way that is credible and lets you go to sleep at night.
Great. Couple last questions, and we'll cover these off. But the first one: how equivalent is the RAP audit checklist to the ESCP Connect? But I think the question probably means the checklist. We're actually doing a separate piece of work. Our colleague Johnny Kong from ESCP is working with his counterpart at RAP to do that equivalency review. We feel that they're very close. We don't see that there being big gaps in place. And although not part of today's webinar, we do hope to continue our collaboration to avoid future duplication. So we would hope, for example, that a RAP certified facility automatically would be recognized by ESCP, and that we wouldn't require the factory to go through the duplicative process of audit, etc., thereby expanding the network, and vice versa. We would hope that RAP would recognize that an ESCP facility would meet theirs. That's quite a complicated piece of work because we both are very committed to the quality and the scope of our programs, but we know they're very similar and aligned. So that's hopefully something that we can announce and communicate a bit further down the line as we continue to work together. But I know we have a shared aim to reduce duplication and ultimately, by working together, improve labour standards without driving costs higher for participants. So yeah, that's important to us. And then the final question that I've got, I think I may have answered something similar to that, but how can we help companies connect and identify, engage with compliant ethical suppliers? There is a huge universe out there of certified RAP and certified ESCP suppliers. We are both organizations very keen to promote those factories and suppliers who are taking labour standards programs, their responsibilities really seriously, and have gone through the robust approach to demonstrating that they take them seriously by being either RAP or ESCP certified. So we definitely want to give them a platform and make it easier for buyers seeking suppliers who are already operating at that standard. So yeah, just get in touch and we'll make connections for you. And for those who have found new suppliers who don't yet have certification in place, then again, get in touch, because we'll happily work with you and hold their hands all the way through the certification journey to make sure that they meet the standards that are required and that you can source with confidence, which is ultimately what we want to ensure. You can source with confidence and workers ultimately work in safe conditions and their rights are respected wherever they are in the world. So I think we've rushed through the questions. Great to see so many questions. We will type these up so you can see them in the written follow-up. There's contact information for both myself and for Todd. So please do get in touch with us. As we've stressed throughout, we're not requiring you to become members of RAP and members of ESCP. We're not requiring you to spend more on audits, whether it's you paying for the audit or you asking your supplier to participate in an audit. This is about really working together to improve standards, reduce costs, and overall provide our stakeholders with a greater supply of quality suppliers. So yeah, anything further that you have, please get in touch and we'll be happy to help. And I appreciate you, so many of you, staying on for this extended 15 minutes. We'll send our follow-up to you shortly. So for now, thank you very much for me. Thank you hugely to the team at RAP. So Mark and Avidis, we really appreciate your time and your commitment to working with us. And thanks, Todd, for taking us through the presentation and organizing this today.
Thank you, Carmel. It was a real pleasure. Looking forward to continuing this wonderful partnership that we've started.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
For the rest of your day.